Imagine waking up tomorrow and your cell phone is just gone. No phone calls, no text messages, no endless doom scrolling through millions of social media apps. Just silence. Would you feel anxious? Would you feel angry? Or maybe even a little bit relieved? Today on Return to Eden, we're going to dive deep into the science behind this sneaky addiction that has been slowly taking over our lives for some time now. Are we more connected or just more controlled? What is the definition of smartphone addiction, Jamie?
Well, smartphone addiction is actually called problematic smartphone usage, or PSU. Now, this is characterized by an excessive and compulsive use of smartphones that negatively impacts an individual's daily life, relationships, and overall well-being. The experts estimate that between 30 to 50% of the U.S. population is actually smartphone addicted. And it's much more prevalent in the younger generations and especially in the male demographic.
I find that really interesting because as I was reading through the various studies from the National Institutes of Health, I found that while men are more commonly addicted, women tend to experience those negative impacts at a much higher rate, sometimes up to 70%.
Wow.
So in this modern age, it is so important for us to be aware of what the signs and symptoms of problematic smartphone usage, or PSU, are.
Yeah, so the signs are, of course, excessive use. You're on there way too much, but even to the point where you're neglecting responsibilities. Emotional dependence is another sign, or using it as a coping skill or a crutch for avoiding negative emotions or stress.
Avoiding the processing of difficult situations, which I have actually seen that in real time in my life, where I will, rather than unpacking why I reacted in a certain way or how I would have preferred to react, I will just look at funny videos or cooking videos. And the thing that really bothered me about that is I didn't even realize I was doing it until I saw my son doing it. And then it's like, oh, it clicks in your mind. That is not a healthy way to deal with things that are happening in your life. The difficulty for me in that was that I've recognized this big problem in how I'm coping and how I'm teaching through my behavior, my children to cope. But what caused me to get there? How do we reach a point where rather than having a conversation with someone or dealing with an interpersonal conflict, we just disappear into an app?
Well, there are psychological factors at play there, and it really stems from our need for social engagement is what a lot of the science is showing. This instant access to talk to friends or family or even strangers on the social apps, to react and comment, it really releases dopamine and gives us this reward, and it does become addictive.
And to me, it's almost an artificial connection. So you're not actually socially interacting. You're not actually enriching your life by having these beautiful experiences and building these relationships. It is possible to do those things on social media. I met my husband online, so obviously we know it can happen. But the vast majority of us just don't get the same payoff from the dopamine hit you get from commenting on a friend's photo as you would from giving that friend a hug or even having a phone call.
Yeah, and it fosters this dependence on this constant validation too. Oh, I post this photo of my family and people comment, oh, what a beautiful family. And you're like, oh, yay, my family's so pretty.
They are.
Just one example. It does. It's this perpetual reward system and it easily draws you in. Another factor is the FOMO, or fear of missing out as well. So if you put your phone down and you walk away, there's been times where I've fasted social media use, but you do kind of have this, oh, what if I'm missing something important? What if something is going on? See, we don't watch like the news on our TV anymore. We don't have cable. So most of it comes from things I look up online or news flashes or whatever it is, notifications, these different apps. And when you're not looking at that, there is a little bit of, oh, I might be missing something.
Even on a more personal level, like I have some friends from my childhood that don't live nearby. And so to fast from social media is for me to separate myself from the ability to keep in touch with their lives, even if I'm not interacting or posting, just the knowledge. Now, the other part of that is that it can almost become a negative thing to witness the things that are happening in other people's lives. With as easy as it is to become addicted to those things, it makes you wonder if that wasn't the point all along. Create this physical distance and space between us as people. Remove those actual, tangible connections and replace them with something artificial that's more controllable. Do you think that there's some kind of nefarious design behind these things to force us into these addictive relationships with our devices?
Yes, absolutely. There is a term called gamification where they try to gamify everything to really exploit on that reward system and to draw us in to the point where a notification may spark some dopamine. Oh, I got a text, or oh, someone commented on my post. So technology companies have always used different kinds of manipulative algorithms to encourage engagement. But now there is this ever increasing power of AI to be able to go in and exponentially make these even more addictive.
Yeah, the strengthening of those manipulative algorithms and the design of these apps that encourage you to check in and be present and get these stars. I mean, that is so dangerous and nefarious when you really break it down to brass tacks.
Yeah, and when you pair that with the fact that everything is at our fingertips, there's gambling, video games, social media, shopping. Exactly. It's right there at our fingertips. And with them making this more and more addictive, I'm really not surprised that it has its own term now.
There are a lot of mental health ramifications that go along with being addicted. So it's not just that we're denying our responsibilities and maybe experiencing some real life consequences for that at home with our families or in the workplace. I think it's important to discuss the very real mental health consequences of problematic smartphone usage. There are several documented mental disorders related to that, but let's get more specific in terms of an increase in depression, anxiety, sleeping problems. In fact, 76% of the studies that have been done by the National Institute of Health show a significant relationship between problematic smartphone usage and anxiety and depression, particularly in women. Another thing I think is important to note is that, yes, there are real life consequences for denying your responsibilities, but what about the mental health consequences of problematic cell phone usage? Researchers at the Institute of Psychiatry, Psychology, and Neuroscience at King's College London are linking problematic cell phone usage to an increase in mental health issues. Some of these things have even been listed as diagnosable mental disorders. Additionally, the National Institutes of Health have found that in 76% of completed studies, there's a significant relationship between problematic cell phone usage and increased mental health issues. Something I think definitely contributes to that is the decrease in real face-to-face interactions. These artificial connections that we create online can have benefits. We are able to learn, we're able to research, we're able to connect with people that we would never have spoken to, but nothing replaces the face-to-face interaction with someone that you care about.
That's absolutely true. And it's not just smartphones. I know my husband and I like to play video games sometimes, and we used to always have, I guess what they're called, couch co-ops. We sit next to each other and we fight the bad guys. Now you have to be in like a totally different room with a completely different gaming system in order to play together. And so we have done that before. I'll be in the dining room and he'll be in the living room and we'll play together. But why can't we be face to face? Why are they phasing this out? It's like they're forcing us to lose that face to face social connection.
The benefits of physical interaction with another human being. And why? Why can't we just have a split screen like we used to when we played Mario Kart? So we've talked about mental health, but there are physical ramifications for these kinds of things too, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It affects your cognition. So your attention span goes down. It causes you to have memory problems or even trouble trying to make decisions.
And the damage that blue light can do, tech neck, which is something that we kind of all deal with now with so much need to be online or using technology just to exist in the daily world.
Yeah, it can contribute to dry eyes because you're not blinking as much. Some people have developed headaches, blurred vision. We need to be aware of how this is impacting our bodies. And it's something you don't think about. I've gone to social media and I've scrolled and enjoyed my little dopamine hits. And I'm not even thinking about, I haven't blinked, when I probably should have been blinking, or my eyes are blurry or
your
strained.
posture.
Yes, posture. I have to correct my children all the time.
And that can lead to all kinds of neck and spinal issues that could potentially be lifelong.
Absolutely. You get that hunchback going on. You can develop some curvature that's not supposed to be there, a lot of back pain. We're not meant to be in that position for so long.
And being sedentary, we, of course, have already covered that can increase your risk of a vast number of health issues overall. And sedentary lifestyle, a lot of those apps and games require so much of your attention that it's not even realistic to be doing that and going for a walk.
It can also cause a lot of hand and wrist issues because I don't know about you, but when I scroll, I'm using my thumb, and I've actually developed a little bit of tenderness or inflammation in that area sometimes. So that signals me maybe I'm on my phone too much if my wrist is hurting me.
Right. You want to watch out for that. Carpal tunnel is something that can be extremely debilitating long term. My mother suffered from that. My birth mother did. And I can remember as a kid watching her try to massage her wrist or work it into a pillow because the pain was so intense that she just couldn't stand it.
It can also cause disrupted sleep cycles, a difficulty falling asleep. Sometimes it can really upset your nerves. I know for a while I was playing Candy Crush. And I got to the part where you have timed levels or you have like a little blob that is slowly eating up squares. Anyway, it was stressful. And so I would do that before bed and I'd put my phone down and I'd try to go to sleep, but I was still very alert.
Amped up.
Yes.
From the battle of candy.
Yeah. It can affect your sleep. And Lord knows we need our sleep.
Absolutely. Not having good sleep hygiene is something that plays into almost any negative and nefarious thing that could be happening to your body. Probably the most concerning thing I found in my research was the number of studies that are directed specifically to children and youth. So because children and teenagers have a lowered ability to regulate those impulsive behaviors, they are especially susceptible to not just the addiction to their smartphone and their device, but also to those mental health issues that come along with it. Probably the most concerning fact that I found when doing my part of the research for this episode was how much more susceptible our children and teenagers are to the mental health ramifications of problematic smartphone usage. Because they lack the same ability to modulate those impulsive behaviors, it's so important that we, as the adults and the parents, take control in those situations. And that can look different for every family. We're not passing judgment if you allow screen time or don't allow screen time, but we do encourage you to set realistic limits, understanding that, yes, there are so many benefits to having access to information the way that we do now. Do you remember what it felt like in middle school to have to go to the bank of encyclopedias to be able to do a research paper or even something simple like a book report?
It was very time consuming.
So time consuming. And we ended up missing a lot of really valuable information that we have access to now, that our children have access to. The National Institute of Health has found that the negatives have begun to far outweigh the positives of the connectivity that we have access to with smartphones and technology in general.
Yeah, I know in our family, I've become very hyper aware of this. And so our son, who really enjoys gaming on his phone or the Xbox, we've had to limit him to 1 hour. And that has been a struggle, right? Because there was a little bit more screen time during the summer.
Right.
But, as we're far into the school year now, it is 1 hour you get on a school night to be able to play on a game or your phone. You have to pick.
Right.
And there are things that us parents can do. We can use apps to help us limit their screen time.
Yeah.
I know that there is Family Link, Circle, and Custodio. These apps will help you monitor that. There's also built-in screen time management. So a lot of the cell phones now will have somewhere on there where you can actually establish downtime where you are not allowed to use certain apps.
Mm-hmm. Our Family Link does that. Actually, I can set a time where it basically tells my children, like, you are offline. There's no connectivity accessible. And that's a way to just remove all argument. Because I do tend to be a little bit of a softie sometimes, especially when it comes to my youngest. I think we can all agree that the baby of the family sometimes gets away with a little bit more. But she'll come and say, oh, just 5 more minutes. That's her thing. That's her thing when I wake her up in the morning for school, when I want her to get out of the swimming pool, when it's time to turn off her device. Just 5 more minutes, Mom. 5 more minutes. And it's so easy for me because I'm busy doing other things or I'm having a conversation with one of my other children. It's easy for me to just acquiesce to that. Okay, honey, just 5 more minutes. Well, minutes turn into hours. And if you think about it, from the time we get home from work and actually start to experience quality time with our children, even a 1-hour time limit is a third of the time that you could have been spending together as a family.
I think we all struggle, and there are days where you are more on top of it than others. There are other days where he knows it's 1 hour, but that we all forget about it. And then we're like, hey, wait a minute, you've been on there too long. And so then we have to come up with some consequences. And it is sometimes an ongoing battle to really make sure they're adhering to that 1 hour limit. But it is such a problem that there are awareness campaigns or initiatives. I don't know if you've heard of, it's hashtag device-free dinner that's being promoted, really trying to encourage parents to have that social engagement, that quality time with your kid. Don't let technology pull you away from quality time with your kids. They need it. I don't want to get to my old age and be like, man, I wish I would have spent more time with my children, but I was always scrolling on an app or they were always gaming. We only get such a finite amount of time with our children. We really do. I was thinking my son is 11. I will be lucky if I have maybe 7 more good Christmases before he's looking to leave.
That's such a sad number when you think about it. I had a similar feeling with my daughter's holiday party recently where I was counting in my head how many holiday parties I had left. And I actually had no intention on going to this particular one. But when I sat down and ran the numbers, I realized I have, less than 10 holiday parties that I'm going to be able to really enjoy with my daughter before she's just too cool for school, Another thing I found interesting was the increased awareness, the access to digital literacy programs. Now, they discuss things like digital citizenship, how to treat each other while you're online. It talks about how to know if the information that you're looking at is true or not, real life scenarios so that they can understand how to protect themselves and limit exposure to really dangerous, harmful content that isn't meant for them.
As we wrap up, there are a few easy to implement things that you can do starting today. One could be developing the habit of leaving your phone in another room, especially at bedtime. You can turn off notifications or put on Do Not Disturb. And of course, as we discussed before, setting those screen limits to help with that. And your child may experience a little bit of a digital detox period as well. It is real. You can have withdrawal symptoms. And so that is normal. Be prepared for that. But implementing these small little things can really help. We want to improve cognition. We want them to have a good attention span and a good memory. We want them to be able to make decisions, and it's impacting children's development. We've got to do something.
I absolutely agree. And I think communicating with your children is another really valuable way to let them know the danger that they're in when it comes to their interactions online. So be aware of what your children are doing online. Talk to them, ask them questions, and help them lead you in different things that are going to work for your family. Thank you for watching Return to Eden. Like always, feel free to leave a comment below if you have any questions or suggestions on future programs, and we hope you have a blessed day.